darkness continues.
Dark Exodus.
Think about this. Think about this. Think about this. Think about this.
You put that crap down on your children.
Doc Phoenix in the house. In the house. In the house. In the house.
Them old mama.
What's good, Doc Phoenix?
Pleasure, brother. Thank you. Nothing much. I'm always up late anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
nothing
well,
big,
we
no.
we were talking about feeding the failure. This is actually part 2 of a double cast. Me and brother Big Nate did a double cast because I was over on his show earlier, and we just kind of flipped over to here to finish up the topic. Because see, I was over on brother Nate's being really nice. I actually came back over here and was able to not be so nice, if you will. So
Gotcha.
what's good with it, Doc? What's your take on this whole? Because we basically were talking about childhood obesity, food deserts and such. What's your take on it, Doc?
Well, I'm one. Do I believe food deserts exist? Yes, absolutely. That's always been a problem for various reasons. But typically, when you're dealing with childhood obesity, food deserts are part of the issue, but they're not the overriding issue. Typically, the issue with obese children are the parents. In my experience, my opinion, the biggest impediment to children losing weight, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, has always been the parents.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, brother Doc Phoenix. Hold up. You mean to tell me it's not the white man, the white power structure, the government, the whoever, the white boogeyman? Is that what you're saying, Doc? Go ahead.
Yes, yes. I'm saying that. What I'm saying is that while it is true that there are systemic issues to contend with that lead to black folks living in economically depressed areas and stuff like that. However, with that said, it has, in my opinion, it has not been uncommon for me to see children that are overweight but dressed to the nines. The parents are dressed to the nines, in particular the mother dressed to the nines, and the child is already pre-diabetic. Or what you was talking about earlier about the 3-year-old. I think you said 3-year-old was on a CPAP machine.
Yes. The
that
boy weighed damn near 100 pounds, Doc Phoenix.
Yes,
And
that's morbidly
he's been
obese.
on the machine. He's been on the machine for 2 years. He got
Yeah.
diagnosed 2 years earlier. She had 2 years to do something about this and didn't, Doc.
Yeah, I think that story you was talking about, it was actually it was presented to me. It was presented to me. I want to say maybe about a month or so ago. So I think I'm somewhat familiar with that story. It was a documentary, I believe.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that what folks should understand about childhood health and obesity in general is that those habits that children pick up at that age, they carry that into the adolescent years and ultimately into the adult years. And so, unfortunately, for most folks, if that's the way they were raised, it becomes highly unlikely that behavior will ever change.
Exactly.
Highly unlikely. I mean, outside of it is not uncommon these days to see a 16, 17-year-old early stages of cardiovascular disease. I've seen 16, 17-year-olds having stroke, having heart attacks. This is something that's becoming more commonplace. Certainly over the last 2 decades, this is gone. If you ask me, this is really the true epidemic in America. Is really is the explosive rise in childhood obesity, and how that has been related to the exponential growth you've seen in type 2 diabetes as well.
Yeah, man.
And so we've seen this explosion of childhood diabetes. Folks being diagnosed in their single digit ages, and in their adolescent years with type 2 diabetes. And typically you only see folks at that young of an age with diabetes unless they're type 1, which is congenital. But to see people having diseases that are normally associated with aging,
Yes,
in childhood is one, highly problematic, and two, should be considered uncommon. But in today's society, unfortunately, that's not the case.
And it's almost as if, and shout out to brother Ken Dog for the $10 super chat. He said, thank you for having this discussion. We don't speak enough about physical health in this space and the dangers of sugar and carbohydrates consumption. That's not true, brother Ken Dog, because Doc Phoenix is here quite often talking about health. So stick around, subscribe to the old T.P.O.T YouTube page, because every now and then we talk some healthy stuff. Now, all the other times we just up here talking shit. But from time to time, we actually talk about health stuff. Yeah, we actually do, brother. Appreciate the $10 super chat. Appreciate it, brother. But this is the thing. It's almost as if we've normalized fat and overweight so much that we've totally disregarded the threats of the childhood diabetes, the cardiovascular problems, the hypertension, the joint problems. It's almost as if those things, we have completely washed those things out of our mind as a threat, as we constantly stuff these children with not only unhealthy stuff, but an abundance of unhealthy stuff. It's not even like, you're just giving them a little bit. You're overstuffing them with this unhealthy crap. And their health is being totally disregarded. I did a video presentation, Doc Phoenix, and they said that 77% of children that are obese will eventually become obese adults. What they're doing when they do this to these children is they are putting these children on a path to failure. Because these things just don't, and we talked about this earlier too, these things don't just affect the child's health. That's the major thing. But they also talked about how it affects the child emotionally, mentally.
Can I add to that really
They can't
quickly?
make friends. They get rejected. All that kind of stuff. Go ahead, Doc Phoenix.
Yeah, can I add to that, because you bring up something really important, and this goes back to the 3-year-old that was on the CPAP. So if you're familiar, I'm sure you probably known some folks who they were much older, who had a CPAP. Typically,
yes,
older.
Yes. It's usually older folks.
Yeah,
older folks.
Yeah. So if people are not familiar, you get on CPAP because you're typically diagnosed with a condition called sleep apnea. So sleep apnea essentially means you stop breathing intermittently when you should be asleep, which forces you to wake up. So you think of a 3-year-old that has sleep apnea at 3 years old. The average 3-year-old should be getting about 12 hours of sleep a night. So if this child has to wake up, constantly throughout the night, because obviously they can't breathe, they can't get enough air into the lungs, which is why they have the CPAP, because the CPAP forces a constant stream of air into the pressurized air into the lungs, so that the airway stays open.
Think about this.
The point of that is that the reason why sleep is so important, because sleep is all part of that cycle of rest and relaxation. Well, not relaxation, but that cycle of rest and repair. So when you're asleep is when the body tends to do its digestion, is when the body makes all these little makes all these little repairs to itself. All these things. This is why
don't
sleep
you
is
grow? Don't you grow in your sleep too, Doc? Don't you grow in your sleep or no?
Yes and no. It's more or less what happens is that this is allowed. Sleep is where your body can actually concentrate on doing the thing that is, and to an extent it is true, but sleep is more about the body being able to rebuild itself, repair itself,
replenish itself.
Right? Exactly. Absolutely. And so when you're not able, when a child is not able to get to sleep, you need to. If you go back to, you think about so whenever we're looking at children and as medical providers and healthcare in general, when you're looking at children, the first thing you're thinking about at that age, you're thinking about growth and development. Is this child hitting their developmental milestones for their age? And so when you think about a child at 3 years old on a CPAP, I would expect this child to have some form of emotional and mental instability of some kind. That would not be unexpected. And part of that is because yes, that cycle, that 24-hour cycle, that circadian cycle that the body is on, that also helps to maintain that natural hormonal balance in the body. Now again, when you're young, you're producing hormones, but not nowhere near to the extent that it would be if you were in adolescence. However, being overweight forces the body to produce some of these more harmful hormones. And because in general, being overweight is a form of stress, is a form of physiological stress. And this is why you see, this is one of the major causes of early onset menses or a period in a young girl. So whenever typically young girls should have their first period, menses, or we also call it a menarche, around usually between 11 and 13 years old. But because of obesity, we're seeing a lot of young girls having their menarche at 7, 8, 9 years of age, 10 years of age. And so you're seeing them entering a stage that was more phased and tapered out much earlier in their life. And so again, that comes with a lot of issues too. When you think about a young girl, for example, who's having an early period, she's having a period at an early age. Can you imagine being an 8, 9-year-old girl and you're having to go to school and that's happening? Yeah. Or for boys, you have that because you're overweight, it suppresses testosterone production. Because being overweight, actually for men, you produce more estrogen, and estrogen actually inhibits testosterone.
Wow.
So this is why, and so you need testosterone for men for those secondary sex characteristics. So
Think about this.
Facial hair, also is part of the process of boys going into puberty, where you do the colloquial testicle drop, if you will. That's part of the deepening of the voice. So when those things, being overweight actually throws much of that out of cycle. Okay. And so again, this is a whole topic. I don't want to take up the other brother's time, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. And shout out to brother Sun is Hot Raw for the 10 shillings. I think that is. Is that shillings, brother Sun?
No, those are pounds.
Pounds. Okay.
Those are pounds.
My bad. Okay,
Yeah.
my bad. I'm stupid. I'm an old nigga. I'm sorry, y'all. Carbohydrates is not the issue. In fact, you need carbs for energy. It's the overconsumption of processed carbs and foods in general. But if you have good carbs in moderation, it can be beneficial. Exactly. But if you're a kid, the only carbs you getting is what your mammy give you. So I mean, you kind of messed up in the game if you a little fella and you 3 and 4 years old and your mama feeding you all kinds of crap, and you can't do nothing about it. You can't do nothing about it.
Doc X.
You put that crap down on your children. Them old mama.
enough.
The darkness continues. Open your mind.
Only from T.P.O.T. Media. Open your